Now that you have everything installed on your machine, in the next demo, we are going to configure things so that we have a running version of ASP.NET 0. Alright, the goal of the next demo is showing you how you can get from the zip that we downloaded in the previous demo to a running application. Alright, let's do that. So I suggest at this point that you follow along with everything that I'm doing here. And step one is extracting the zip file. I think that's pretty simple. By the way, notice again that the word demo has been added, indicating that this is a free demo project that doesn't count towards your download limit. This is a demo project that we are using in this course. All right, so everything has been extracted. Let's take a look. In this phonebook demo folder here, we actually have a couple of folders. One is the Angular folder, and that will quite logically contain the Angular code. And then we have the ASP.NET Core folder, which again, quite logically, will contain the server-side ASP.NET Core code. Let's start by exploring the ASP.NET Core folder. Now, why are there different solutions available here? Well, that actually depends on the project type that you are using. We are using the Angular ASP.NET Core combination, so in that case, the web solution will do fine. I will talk more about these solutions and the projects that they contain in the next chapter. So let's start by opening the web solution in Visual Studio. Let's collapse everything here. And under source, we'll see a couple of projects, including the web host. Make sure that web host has been set as the startup project. The web host is really the API that the Angular application will be talking to. So that is basically the executing application, and that also means that we need to specify the connection string here under app settings. If you haven't worked with ASP.NET Core before, note that the app settings.json file is, as the name implies, a settings file, and it will contain, among others, settings. These settings include, for example, also the connection string. You can see the connection string here at the top, and I'm going to replace it with my connection string. There we go. I am using localDB. The database name that I'll be using is phonebook demo database. That can, of course, be whatever you want it to be. And I will be using a trusted connection. All right, that's step one to get things to work. Now, the next thing I'll need to do is I'll need to run a database migration. I can do that using the Package Manager console. If you don't know where the Package Manager console is, go to View, Other Windows, and there you'll find Package Manager console. I have it here at the bottom of my screen. Make sure that you select the Entity Framework Core project. We'll see in the next chapter that this project contains the context, the database context. So this will need to be specified as the default project. All right, so in here I can now type update database. This will now compile my application and run a database migration. There we go, the migrations have been applied. So ASP.NET 0 is a multi-tenant based solution. That means that we can basically host multiple versions of the application on the same code base. Now, for now, I will disable that. We'll come back to that later in this course. So I'll need to search for the multi-tenancy enabled property and set that to false. You can find this property in the phonebook demo const class. And we can now set this property to false. With these steps done, we can now run the server-side ASP.NET Core project. Let's hit the run button and see the result. The result is a Swagger UI demo page, where I can test all the API calls that are exposed on my application. If you don't know what Swagger or Swagger UI is, don't fear, we'll talk about that later in this course. So with this API running, we can now take a look at the client-side application. So that is the Angular application. So leave this running for now. So we'll go back to phonebook demo and we'll now open the Angular project here. As you can see, there is a CSProj file and a solution, but I'll not be using that. I will be using Visual Studio Code, which doesn't really need this because it's based on the folder structure rather than a CSProj file. So I'll copy this path here and I'll go to Visual Studio Code. Now in Visual Studio Code, I can open a folder. I will specify my folder here, the Angular folder, select that one, and it will now open my application. Now you need to go to the terminal, and at this point we now need to restore packages. I showed you earlier in this module that you need to have yarn installed because this is where it will actually be used. So in the terminal window, you can go ahead and type yarn. I've done a fast forward here, and as you can see, all my packages have been successfully restored. As mentioned earlier, this should also work with npm, but we get better results with yarn at this point. So I do recommend using yarn for restoring of the packages. So now we can run the application, and for that we'll use npm start. ASP.NET 0 comes with a fully configured CLI so that we can fire all the typical commands. And as mentioned, I will be using npm start here. This will now compile my application and host it via localhost port 4200. I've again fast forwarded things a little bit. I don't think it's very useful that you watch my machine compiling my application. But at the end, it did say compiled successfully. So that means that we can now go to a new browser window and take a look at the result. So here's a fresh, clean browser page. Let's now go to localhost 4200. We've now arrived on the login page. The default username is admin and the default password is 123QWE. So let's enter these. Click on login. I will now come to this reset password page where I can enter my own password. I'm going to enter my new password. There we go, we can submit it. And now we land on that dashboard that we've seen before. So now we have a fully running application. I hope you followed along and you already see the result of your work at this point.